Starting off with the Angels, and I say they keep shooting for more upside. Now, they've been active this offseason, more so focusing on bounce-back candidates like Grayson Rodriguez, Alek Manoah, Josh Lowe, Vaughn Grissom, Drew Pomeranz, Kirby Yates, and Jordan Romano. Man, oh man, they're adding a lot of guys. But why stop there? There's still guys out there that fit that category, like Zach Gallen, Marcell Ozuna, Michael Kopech, and even Jordan Montgomery. Could you imagine if everything comes together for the Angels? Maybe they end up being a playoff contender. The Astros made a big splash signing Tatsuya Imai, along with bringing in some other arms like Mike Burrows and Ryan Weiss, but their infield is looking a little full, so I say they look to move either Christian Walker or Isaac Paredes. Now with Christian Walker, he did put up some good numbers in Arizona, but then he had a down first season with the Astros, so maybe they look to move his contract to a team needing a first baseman, but that would be mostly a salary dump unless they ate a lot of the contract, and I'm not sure if they're going to do that only after 1 year. Now if they traded Walker though, they could simply move Paredes over to first base. Now, if they wanted more of a guaranteed better return, then they could move Paredes, who's got a solid bat with a couple more years of control. The A's have been busy this offseason, trading for Jeff McNeil and signing Tyler Soderstrom to an extension, but they still need an arm for the rotation. Now, that lineup is looking very good going into 2026, but their starting pitching was terrible last year. They ranked 29th in Fangraph wins above replacement, and they haven't added anyone there. I think a reunion with someone like Chris Bassett could make a lot of sense, or maybe someone like Nick Martinez would be a good fit, because both of them won't cost too much, and both those guys do well at limiting the home runs, which would be nice in Sacramento. The Blue Jays have had a great offseason coming off a World Series appearance, but I think they should make one more move for the bullpen. Now they've added Dylan Cease, Kazuma Okamoto, Tyler Rogers, and Cody Ponce, while also bringing back Shane Bieber. Now they did miss out on Kyle Tucker, unfortunately, but overall, a very good offseason. I think they need to add one more guy for the bullpen, though. Now, Tyler Rogers, I like that addition, but Jeff Hoffman, he was very shaky last year, blew Game 7 of the World Series, so I think another arm back here could go a long way. Maybe someone like Danny Colomé, solid lefty for the back end of the bullpen, or maybe they could take a chance on a flamethrower like Michael Kopech. On to the Braves, and I think they should add another starting pitcher. Now, they've had some injuries over the last year or so, and adding someone else they can count on, I think would go a long way to help them bounce back in 2026. Now, would they spend the money on someone like Framber Valdez? Maybe they can go for a veteran guy like Chris Bassett, who I just mentioned, who has been an innings eater in his career, or someone like Nick Martinez, who's been a solid swingman, or maybe someone like Lucas Giolito, who had a good bounce-back season last year. On to the Brewers, and I say they should target a right-handed bat. Now, as of right now, they have lefty Jake Bauers projected to be in left field, and with the Brewers never really spending a bunch of money, I could see them going for a cheaper right-handed bat. Austin Hayes is out there, or maybe Miguel Andujar. On to the Cardinals, and I say they try to move Brendan Donovan. Now, I don't think they need to move him necessarily, but if they did get a good offer for him, I say they should take advantage. He has good trade value because he has a couple more years of control, and he's been one of the best hitters in baseball for the last couple of years, along with a ton of versatility. He can play a ton of different positions. He's a high contact bat. He'd be very valuable for a lot of teams out there. And like I said, he's got a couple more years of control on a cheap salary as well. So that's going to create a high surplus trade value. So I say if the Cardinals get a good offer, they should take advantage. On to the Cubs, who finally woke up this offseason, adding Alex Bregman, Edward Cabrera, and multiple arms to the bullpen. Now, they have a solid-looking team, but I would like to see what they could get for Matt Shaw. Now, as of right now, like I said, you got Bregman over at third base, Nico Horner over at second, so they could use Shaw in a utility role, but he does have good trade value since he does have a lot of upside and a ton of control left, so he would fetch a lot back in a trade. Now, again, he could find playing time at multiple positions, but if they could get back, say, a high upside arm, I think they should listen to it. On to the D-backs, and they need to address their bullpen. Their relief pitching ranked 28th in Fangraph wins above replacement last season, and with Justin Martinez out for 2026, they need to start adding some guys there. Now, a lot of them have already come off the board, but there are still guys out there that could bring some value. Justin Wilson, if he doesn't want to retire, Andrew Chafin, Pierce Johnson, or maybe someone with high upside like Michael Kopech. On to the Dodgers, and I say they listen to some trade offers on their prospect depth. Now, they've made a couple of huge splashes this offseason, one being Kyle Tucker and the other being Edwin Diaz. So there's not really much else to do here. I mean, they're looking fantastic at this point, but I think they could look into some possible trades for someone like Bobby Miller or even Ryan Ward. Now, with Bobby Miller, he's fallen off the last couple of years, but he looked great in 2023. On to the Giants, and I say they need to address the bullpen. Now, sure, they did bring in Sam Hentges, who does have a good track record, but he missed all of 2025 after shoulder and knee surgeries, and they also traded away Tyler Rogers and Camille Duvall at the deadline this past year. So they still need to replace those guys. I did mention a bunch of relievers earlier, like Kopech, Chafin. You got Pierce Johnson, Justin Wilson out there. I say they absolutely need to get into that market. They got to bolster this bullpen even more. For the Guardians, I say they look to add a right-handed bat. Now, like I said earlier with the Brewers, the Guardians also don't spend a ton of money, but they could use another right-handed hitter in a lefty-crowded lineup. You got a lot of lefties here. Austin Hayes or Miguel Andujar, and I think that would work here too. On to the Mariners, and I say they need to land one more bat. Now, they did bring back Josh Naylor, which was great, but with Eugenio Suarez also a free agent now, they could use another guy in this lineup. Now, they could bring back Suarez, and sure, he did come up big in the postseason, but he also strikes out a lot. He's getting a little into his 30s now, so do they want to go that route? I'm not so sure, but you know he would bring some pop to the middle of the order. Now, with the Mariners, they did rank top 10 in strikeouts last year, so if they did want a higher contact bat, why not Brendan Donovan, who I mentioned earlier? He would cost quite a bit, but the Mariners do have the prospects to get a deal done. On to the Marlins, and I say they look to add a veteran bat. Now, they did just add a younger bat in Owen Casey from the Cubs for Eber Cabrera, and he's definitely got some power upside, but I think they need a bit more of an established veteran in this lineup to help the Marlins try to compete next year. They took a big step forward this past year, so bringing a bit more floor to this lineup I think could go a long way. Now, the Marlins have shown this offseason they can spend some money. They brought in Pete Fairbanks, but I wouldn't expect much more than that, so I would imagine they would go after a cheaper veteran out there. Maybe someone like Rhys Hoskins, whose numbers did take a bit of a dip last year. You got Nathaniel Lowe. He took a pretty big step back last year. He did show some good things with the Red Sox, so maybe he could be an option there. He is a Florida native as well. Or maybe they could somehow sway Paul Goldschmidt to go there. Maybe even a reunion with Luis Arraez. He hit very well in Miami. Wrapping up the first half of this video, I say the Mets look to move Kadai Senga. Now, they've had one of the best off seasons so far, bringing in Freddie Peralta, Bo Bichette, Jorge Polanco, Luis Robert, Devin Williams, and Luke Weaver. But in the rotation, they're looking pretty full right now after adding Freddie Peralta. So I'm not sure where Kadai Senga fits, especially when they got a couple of young guns like Nolan McLean and Jonah Tong, along with a bounce-back candidate like Sean Manaea. Clay Holmes looked solid last year. So there's a lot of guys in the mix for innings here. So I wonder if Kadai Senga, who's been inconsistent over the last couple of years, could be the odd man out, but maybe a team out there desperate for some pitching like the Athletics or maybe the White Sox could be a fit. All right, so Uber Eats just saved me big time. It's one of those days where I'm slammed, I got a lot to do, but I'm very hungry and I don't want to waste time figuring out what to eat. All I got to do is just open up Uber Eats, look around a little bit, tap what I'm liking, and then I'm done. I can scroll a whole bunch of options very fast, pick what I'm in the mood for, and just like that, it's on the way. And the best part is there's no guessing. Uber Eats makes it very easy to track the order, so I know exactly when it's pulling up. I can literally track the delivery driver from the restaurant to my house. That's absolutely fantastic. When I'm trying to get work done and I'm hungry, I want to know where my food's at. And also, there's new deals popping up all the time, so I'm always checking those out to see how much I can save. And it's not just food. If my potato brain realized that I missed something at the grocery store, I can just add it to the order and keep on moving. You can do everything in one app, and it makes life so much easier. So if you've never tried Uber Eats, I highly recommend you sign up as a new user and use the code Robbie15 to get $15 off your next order of at least $20. All you got to do is order, you track it, and you're all set. On to the Nationals, and I say they look to move CJ Abrams. Now, they've already gotten this reset going, moving Mackenzie Gore to the Rangers, so they might as well keep it going here. Now, with Abrams, he's going to give you a pretty solid bat with a lot of speed. He's got a few years of control left as well, so I could see teams out there being interested. Now, one problem with Abrams is the defensive shortstop is not very good. I think he's more of a second baseman moving forward, so I could see a few teams out there looking to make an upgrade at second base, say the Giants, the Royals, or maybe the Mariners. The Orioles have had a great offseason, but I think they need to add one more guy for the rotation. Now, they bolstered the lineup with Pete Alonso and Taylor Ward, which was great. And for the rotation, they did add Shane Baz while bringing back Zach Eflin. To me, though, I still see quite a bit of injury risk here. So I think adding someone to go to the top of the rotation to help anchor things would go a long way. Now, to me, I think Framber Valdez makes a lot of sense, especially having ties to Mike Elias from their Astros days, or maybe a veteran like Chris Bassett or Justin Verlander. On to the Padres, and I say they look to add add another bat with some power. Now, when it comes to their lineup, they did bring in Sungmoon Song recently, and since he has versatility, he could be more of a utility player, bouncing around the infield and maybe even some outfield too. Now, since they ranked near the bottom in home runs last year, this could be a chance for them to add some power. They could have Gavin Sheets cover both first base and DH, so maybe someone like Eugenio Suarez can share first and DH with them, or maybe they can go for a full-time DH like Marcell Ozuna. On to the Phillies, and I say they look to make an upgrade at third base. Now, they haven't made too many upgrades outside of Adolis Garcia for the lineup and Brad Keller for the bullpen, but perhaps they could get a bit more out of third base. Now, Alec Boehm, he had some injuries last year, saw his power dip. Now, they did have money for Bo Bichette. They were willing to go 7 years, over $200 million for him. In the end, he went to the Mets, so perhaps they could look to move Alec Boehm while using that money elsewhere for someone like Eugenio Suarez, who would be a big power upgrade for the lineup alongside Kyle Schwarber there. Can you imagine Schwarber and Suarez in the lineup together? Man, oh man. Or maybe they can make a trade for Isaac Paredes. Speaking of the Pirates, they have a completely different looking lineup, but I think they should look to add one more bat. Now, listen, after all the problems they've had offensively over the last couple of years, why stop now, even after adding Brandon Lau, Ryan O'Hearn, and Yostinson Garcia? Now, as of right now, they got Jared Triolo over at third base, but he's coming off a down year offensively, so if you could make an upgrade, I'm looking at third. We just talked about Eugenio Suarez. Could you imagine that power bat in this lineup? I just mentioned Alec Boehm. Maybe exchange of scenery could be good for him. Maybe Pittsburgh could be a good home. The Rangers just added Mackenzie Gore to the rotation in a big trade, but I say they keep looking to add some depth in the rotation. Now, Gore was a nice add, but both DeGrom and Eovaldi are injury risks, with Kumar Rocker having issues of his own the last couple of years. Now, there's still guys out there that could come pretty cheap and maybe give you some decent innings like Tomoyuki Sagano, Zach Littell, or Tyler Anderson. With the Rays trading away Shane Baz, they are lacking a bit of depth with the starting pitching, so I think they should add someone there. Now, it is the Rays who don't usually drop a lot of cash, but I could see someone on the cheaper side on a short-term deal to try and get a bit more out of them. Say Nick Martinez, possibly, Tomoyuki Sagano. On to the Red Sox, and even though they signed Ranger Suarez, they still need to replace Alex Bregman. It seemed like doom and gloom after Bregman went to the Cubs, but luckily they signed Suarez to help ease that pain, but they need another bat for this lineup, one that can play either second or third base. And after spending money on Ranger Suarez, which did put them over the second CBT, I think the trade route is a bit more likely. Now, for third base, you got someone like Isaac Paredes, who has a pull-heavy swing, which would fit Fenway Park very well. If the Phillies decided to make an upgrade at third base, maybe Alec Boehm could be an option there. Maybe you can call the Mets about Brett Beatty is coming off his best season. He has been involved in some trade rumors out there. Maybe he could be available. Now, for second base, you got someone like Brendan Donovan, who can also play third base and the outfield. I'm sure the Red Sox would love that versatility, and his high contact bat could pair well with Roman Anthony at the top of the lineup, but they would have a lot of lefties at that point, so I'm not sure if they're going to go that route. And also, speaking of Bregman, maybe you can call the Chicago Cubs. Someone like Nico Horner could maybe be available, but I'm not so sure about that. He just had a great year, so maybe someone like Matt Shaw could be available. I talked about him a little bit earlier. I think he would fit Fenway Park very well, would give them some athleticism. The Red Sox do like that, so maybe someone like Shaw. I've said it time and time again, but the Reds need another bat. Now, they've made a couple of smaller additions with J.J. Bleday and Dane Myers, but after only ranking 22nd in offense last year, they still need an impact guy, in my opinion. Now, it is the Reds, so I don't expect them to spend a whole lot of money, but I could see someone getting some DH time, and I think someone like Marcell Ozuna could make some sense. He's coming off a pretty down year with some injuries, so that could reduce the cost a little bit. He is getting a bit older, but maybe they can bring him in, try to get a bounce-back year out of him. That would be a huge lift for this lineup. Or maybe they can go for a short-term deal for a reunion with Eugenio Suarez if they did want to drop a little bit of cash. Or maybe someone like Luis Ariz. I know he's not a big power bat, but he would bring a lot of contact there. And maybe he can take advantage of that small ballpark. On to the Rockies, and they've done a good amount this offseason to get the front office in order, but they still need to add some more pitching. They did bring in Michael Lorenzen. It's going to help with some innings there, but I still think some more innings from a veteran guy could go a long way, take some pressure off these younger guys while they develop. Maybe someone like Jose Quintana or maybe Tyler Anderson. The Royals have made some moves this offseason, but I think they need one more bat. Now, the popular name for them has been Jarren Duran, which I think could still be possible if they're willing to accept Duran with some pitching for Cole Reagans. Besides that, though, I don't really see the Royals being able to land him, but they do have other avenues they could go down. They could have Jonathan India DH a bit more often, so maybe they can go after a second baseman like Luis Rengifo, who's coming off a down year with some injuries. They could also also go after someone that can play some infield and DH a bit. Maybe someone like Luis Ariz. Could you imagine that bat with the gaps there in Kaufman? That could be pretty good in my opinion. Or maybe they can go after a full-time DH like Marcell Ozuna. On to the Tigers, and I also think they need to add one more bat. Now, they struggled in the second half offensively, so someone more consistent, I think, would go a long way. Maybe they can go after some other bats out there that have some versatility, like Miguel Andujar. I think that would be a solid right-handed bat for them. Maybe another outfielder like Austin Hayes, who has been a solid right-handed bat in his career. But if they really wanted to go for a difference maker, why not someone like Brendan Donovan, who could play multiple positions in this lineup? With the Twins and president of baseball operations, Derek Falvey, parting ways, I say they listed on offers for both Joe Ryan and Pablo Lopez. Now, it seemed like there was a disconnect with Falvey and Twins ownership, with Falvey seeming to be more focused on trying to compete, but since they're going in a different direction now, why not see what you can get for both of these guys? Now, there's still teams out there looking for starting pitching, so maybe they could bring back a big haul. With the White Sox trading Luis Robert, I say they look to add a veteran to replace him. Now, it looks like Luis Angel Acuna is going to get a chance out in center field, so some options for right field could be simply bringing back Mike Tauchman. There's someone like Miguel Andujar. For the Yankees, I say they look to make one more splash. Now, they finally brought back Cody Bellinger, but other than that, not much else. They did bring in Ryan Weathers for the rotation, which I did like, and they brought back both Trent Grisham and Ahmed Rosario, but I feel like they're kind of running it back in a way. They don't feel a whole lot different. So I say the Yankees do the usual Yankee thing and do something big. Now, again, you brought back Cody Bellinger, so maybe someone like Jason Dominguez or Spencer Jones could be available. Why not go back to the table with the Tigers for Tarek Skubal? Now, we did get a report a little while ago saying the asking price was a little bit too much for them, but with Bellinger back, maybe they could dangle Dominguez or Jones. In the end, it's the Yankees, and it just feels weird not seeing them pull off something big. I say they look to make one more move to improve their chances for 2026. But everybody, that's all I got for this video. What are some other last moves that you would like to see? Let me know down below in the comments. But everybody, that's all I got for right now. If you can on the way out, hit the like button, subscribe if you're new, and I'll talk to you next time.